Welcome to Wining and Dining with Jim White. It's the program devoted to introducing you to the people who create the flavors you love. We've been so delighted all month long to have our good friend Christy Rost along with us, food editor of the Park Cities People, cookbook author, television star, wonderful hostess, and look at this, friends, her latest cookbook, Celebrating Home, a handbook for gracious living. That's something that we all need to have in our homes now. That's something that's kind of fallen by the wayside, unfortunately, and many people think that gracious living and style could be passé in American culture. What do you think about that, Christy?
Oh, it's definitely not passé. If anything, a little bit of grace and style is more needed than ever.
Can we throw in a little civility while we're at it?
And you know, graciousness does not equate to stuffiness. So, you know, let me just make that very clear.
Well, I think that's the important thing. I think too many people think that the manners and style and graciousness mean you've got to be all stiff and formal, and it's no fun.
No, what it really means is be yourself and open the door and set a place at the table for someone else. That's what it means. And you just infuse that occasion with your own personality.
Well, indeed. And, you know, Christy, I've really got to hand it to you. People who know you know this, but those who don't, I think will find fascinating that you had a very successful career as a registered nurse and had a family and still do, of course, but had a very busy life. And what put you on this professional pathway that you've been so successful at? And I'm going to read this so I get them all in: lifestyle authority, entertaining guru, cooking teacher, home restoration expert, and did I leave anything out? That's why I wanted to read.
You forgot the chief dishwasher part.
You also have to clean up the mess. Okay.
Yeah, that comes with it. And, you know, my mom taught me that when I was growing up. She said, you can do anything you want in the kitchen as long as you clean up your mess. And I still hear those words ringing.
Well, Vicki and I have a much better deal going. We ought to talk about this off camera. I cook, she cleans, and it was her idea.
Oh, wow, that's good. That's good.
Well, no, seriously. I think I want to break part of that down because we've had the pleasure of spending time at your and your husband Randy's beautiful home in Breckenridge, Colorado. It just can't be described. The setting, the style of this beautiful place, and the history of this fabulous home that you call, or that is called, Swan's Nest. But when you guys took it over, it's not the show place. It was not the show place then that it is now. Talk about that process.
Yes, when we discovered Swan's Nest, it was on a very rainy, cold July day, and Randy and I were actually looking for a piece of property to purchase to build a house. And he said, we came to this road. He said, I think I'm going to turn down this road. And I looked and I saw some log houses and all. I said, I don't want to go down there. And he said, no, I think I'm going to turn down this road. And that is so uncharacteristic of him. And so he turned down the road, and we just drove slowly down, and I looked at all the houses, and I thought, no. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a sign that said, for sale, inquire within. And I said, stop, I see a sign. And he stopped and backed up, and I have thought of those words so many times because that sign actually led us to my dream and my next step in my career. And that was going from local television to national television. This house sat there on a very cold, rainy, dreary day, but it still had great presence. 2-story white clapboard house with a giant red roof. And we went on down, we knocked on the door, and the owner opened the door and said, hello, please come in. And we did. And she took us all around. It was like stepping back into 1970 with the bright orange sink and the orange or gold shag carpeting and, lots of wallpaper that, I hadn't seen any wallpaper like that in a long time. And then we got upstairs, and the rooms were still circa 1898.
My goodness.
And the house, it had the bones, but it didn't have any flesh. and to me, it was instantly, wow, what I could make this room look like. And that's what we did over the next 2.5 years.
And it's absolutely beautiful. Of course, the setting for your very popular PBS program, Christy Rost, A Home for Thanksgiving,
Yes.
Which people got to see around the Thanksgiving holidays.
Yes, that's right.
That we showcased on the program, but also got to see glimpses of your home. But also, it becomes the setting for so much of the work you're doing with cookbooks. And here's a shot of your latest cookbook, Celebrating Home. That is Christy's kitchen behind her there in Breckenridge. And that wonderful cheesecake, which is not in the book, but there are a lot of other great recipes in the book. I'm surprised that cheesecake has survived this long without being devoured.
I know, but we're about to get into that.
But there's so many wonderful things. Let's talk a little bit about the book. Again, we'll show it. It's available. You can get that, as well as Christy's first 2 cookbooks available. ChristyRost.com will kind of direct you anywhere to get all of those. But this book talks about what we were talking about at the beginning of the show, lifestyle and entertaining. So it's casual, it's it's fun, and people feel at home. They feel welcomed into your home. A lot of great tips in it. Let's start with one of the key things. You offer tips in here about what to do before the guests arrive if you're having a party or a dinner reception or something like that.
Yes, I think it's really important to set the stage, and that means being ready for them to arrive. And so if I'm having a group of, say, 8 or 10 for dinner, then I'm going to have the wine glasses all laid out already. I'm going to have little appetizer plates ready with the little forks, napkins there, and so that when they walk in, they know that you're expecting them. They know that you have spent time thinking this through. And to be honest, it's so much easier on the host if you have things ready for your guests to arrive, rather than running around like a crazy person at the very end. And
back in the early days, I was way too frantic with people coming over because I hadn't planned ahead.
Yes, and also, many people. This is probably our greatest failing, and I certainly was guilty of it for a long time. And that is trying to do too much. It's just, you think, oh, I should have this. Well, maybe I should make this other dish. Well, maybe I should add this. Well, I've never made this dish before, but this might be a good time to try it. Don't try it then. Try it on your own. And if it turns out well, then invite them over to have leftovers.
Now, also, you've got some tips. Not everybody has a beautiful, I would think Swan's Nest may be total 6,000-7,000 square feet of living space, maybe more.
It's 57.
Okay. Well, I was fairly close.
You were.
Not bad for eyeballing it. But not everybody's got that much room to host a gathering or throw a party. But you've got some great tips on working with small spaces for parties in your book.
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's true. Not everyone has, that kind of space, and I didn't always have that kind of space. So my ideas come from having to do it. A laundry room is a great place to set up drinks, for instance.
A staging area.
Yes, a staging, but also it can be your serving area. You just cover your washing machine and dryer with a cloth, and you can put wine bucket there and other drinks and things, and if you have a little shelf behind there's a place for your wine glasses. You can always set up an extra table in a space like a little hallway, or in a corner of the dining room, or in the living room, and just set up a spot to put your little hors d'oeuvres, or your drinks, or your dessert, like a little dessert buffet or something. And that helps you to expand your space, so that many people think when they entertain, they have to use only the kitchen and only the dining room. You can use every space in your house just about for entertaining. You know, how many times have you been to a place where all the champagne or the beer is in a bathtub? Well, you know, think outside the kitchen, think outside the dining room to all the spaces you can use. And then go ahead and do it. And it doesn't have to be fancy. I mean, you know, fancy is fancy, but casual is fun.
Yeah. And talk about the magic of lighting and what difference that can make in terms of a party, a dinner party, or just a celebratory get-together.
Yeah. I am famous for putting little white lights on top of my cabinets, be it in the kitchen or on top of the china cabinet or the buffet. It automatically transforms the space into quiet, kind of romantic, very relaxing kind of space. You also can achieve that with candlelight. Candlelight always sets the stage, and it makes a woman's skin just glow. And of course now battery-powered candles are so popular. They're very safe. And you can do a grouping of those. I recommend rather than just two, do a grouping, and maybe a grouping on top of a mirror or on top of a tray. Not necessarily on the dining table. Put a little tray of them in the kitchen. Put them in the living room, in the entry. All of the spaces that your guests will be in, those are ripe for creating things with beautiful lighting. Lamps with soft, like small lamps with maybe 25-watt bulbs, that kind of thing. Don't go for the 100 watts. Go for the lower watts, and create just a really soft, quiet, romantic kind of feel.
That's lovely. Now, you talk in your book about treating yourself like a guest. What do you mean by that?
It's really important to take time to kind of ratchet down the busy lives that we have. And one of the ways I do that is maybe create a little afternoon tea for myself with a tray, with a teapot and a teacup, and maybe a little cookie or a biscuit or something, and have a quiet interlude all by myself. But another way to do it is a tradition that Randy and I have established, whether we're home here in Dallas or whether we're in our second home in Colorado, and that is we'll pour a glass of wine in the late afternoon and have some nuts or crackers with a beautiful cheese or something like that, and take 30 minutes to sit in a favorite spot and sip our wine, talk about our day, maybe plan a trip that we've been wanting to take, or plan what we're going to do the next week, and just have that quiet moment together and treat ourselves the way we would treat our guests when they arrive.
And that may be one of the reasons why you and Randy have been married for a good period of time. How long?
42 years.
Yeah.
42 years.
Keep the magic and the love alive.
Absolutely.
A little bit of time and attention.
Yes.
Now, floral arranging is also one of your specialties. You just do some stunning things. You talk about ways in your book about floral arrangements. Again, they don't have to be fancy.
No, and they don't have to be expensive. I like to buy my flowers at the supermarket because I'm always there grocery shopping. So if I see a beautiful selection of flowers, I'm going to pick them up right then. And I generally don't spend a lot on my floral arrangements. One of the things I love to do that's so easy for anybody out there to do is to take several wine glasses, stemless wine glasses, use 3 of them, and buy a bouquet or 2 of flowers. Maybe for the holiday season, it would be, let's say, some white mums and add some red roses to it, and a little couple of pieces of greenery from your yard, and just create little bouquets in those 3 stemless wine glasses, and then put them down your table. It makes a beautiful statement. It's very inexpensive. It's easy to do, and you didn't spend a bundle at the florist.
That's a great idea. I like that. I like that very much. Now, of course, there are lots of great recipes in this book that were all created in your beautiful kitchen at Swan's Nest in Breckenridge, Colorado. Talk about some of your favorites from this. And then we have more things from you. We're going to show pictures of fire cooking, and we've got a recipe from you that you did in your backyard at Swan's Nest,
Yes.
which is coming up. But let's get to celebrating home here.
Okay, one of my favorite recipes in the book is a duck breast with a bourbon reduction. It was a cherry infused bourbon reduction and dried figs, and all of the flavors work so well together. You have the fat from the duck, you have the sweetness from the cherries and the bourbon. You've got the chewiness, the texture going with the figs, and it all becomes very earthy and absolutely, I can feel my mouth watering right now. Oh my gosh. But one of the things I love about that recipe, and it's typical in a lot of the recipes I create, is that as gorgeous as it is on the plate, I can do a lot of it ahead. The duck, and actually in the book I think I might have even used a duck leg and thigh, but the duck I can actually do the searing of the meat early in the day, and then set it aside, and I just keep all the drippings in the pan so that then just before my guests arrive, I can finish off that duck in the oven, make the sauce in the pan with the cherry bourbon and some beef stock, and boom, dinner's ready. And I love being able to, do something like that. Another recipe that I absolutely adore in there is my cherry rhubarb tart. And this is a recipe that was inspired by a visit to my mom and dad's farm in Illinois. And Mom said, well, I'm going to harvest some rhubarb for you to take home. Would you like to help me? I said, sure. So we hauled on up to the garden, and she proceeded to show me how to harvest rhubarb. You grasp it with both hands, and you just pull right out of the ground, and it just snaps right off.
Weed.
That's right, and it snaps off of the root base every time. And so I ended up taking it home in my suitcase, and I took it back to Colorado actually. And when I got there, I thought, okay, what am I going to do with this rhubarb? And all of a sudden, I had this vision of rhubarb combined with cherries. And I created the recipe, and it has a lattice top, and it's just so beautiful. And I think about my mom every single time that I make that recipe. There are some wonderful sauces in here that I made to pair with one food or another, but the sauces themselves are really, really yummy. There's a wonderful tomatilla salsa in there that I paired with a grilled chicken breast, but it's really so good just as a dip with chips, or over enchiladas or tacos. It's super on its own. I have a spicy mango salsa that I created to go with panko crusted shrimp. As an appetizer. And the shrimp, of course, are absolutely delicious on their own, but the salsa is fabulous with it. However, the salsa is also so good as an accompaniment to chicken, or to serve it with brie cheese. And a bonus is the spicy mango salsa also freezes beautifully. So I can make it, use some of it, put the rest in the freezer, and then just pull it out when guests arrive.
And of course, all of these recipes in the cook, Celebrating Home from Christy Rost, a handbook for gracious living, and also recipes available on your website.
Yes, I have quite a large selection of recipes on my website at ChristyRost.com. That's ChristyRost.com, and so many great recipes there for the holidays.
Okay. Now, also, we sort of teased you with the thought of fire cooking, live fire cooking. And I think we've got some pictures of this, but set the stage for us. I mean, that sounds like you're cooking over a live fire.
I really am, yes. And in fact, my husband Randy and I have made this a dual project. We do this together. And it's kind of a natural extension of our life in Colorado. We're surrounded by nature. We have 14 acres. I've got the 10-mile range ahead of, right in front of the house. So I have spectacular mountain views. But we also have forest, national forest behind us, but then we also have forest on our property. And we have 2 ponds, and the upper pond it offered the perfect spot to create a fire ring. And so we had a 42-inch diameter round fire ring hand forged for us. We cleared the area up beyond the pond. We put it there. Randy hauled in huge logs from trees that had fallen or needed to come down because of the pine beetle devastation, and created this wonderful spot just right in front of the pond with the beautiful trees and all, not too far away. And we started grilling and cooking outdoors. I have an outdoor oven that I used, and you mentioned about the tart that I made and baked in there, and we can talk about that. But then beyond that, then I really wanted to cook over live fire, and not with charcoal, but with logs. And that's what we have started doing. So now we started our day. We did a massive day of live fire cooking, and the two of us were, we smelled purely like smoke by the end of the day, and everything we wore, and you could almost, it was almost on my breath. There was so much smoke. But we started with breakfast, and we used a wonderful selection of cast steel cookware, and has real long handles. It's something new from Lodge, and they sent me a selection to try, and because I told them what I wanted to do, and I just absolutely loved it. What I didn't realize was when we cooked the bacon in this pan and then moved it until it was nice and crisp and moved it aside, and we put in the potatoes and the onions and the peppers and the spices and all, and we cooked all those in the pan, and then we moved them to the side. And I mean, they're still in this big pan, this big skillet. And then we added these beautiful cage-free eggs and cooked the eggs in the skillet. When we went to dish it all out, I was shocked to find the eggs just slid right out of the pan. I thought, oh my gosh, I can actually take a photo of these eggs. I thought maybe they were going to be, just kind of messy, and they weren't. They came right out of the pan. I go, whoa, I love this. And so we moved right from breakfast. And by the way, we ate almost every bit of it. And then we moved on, and Randy really had this vision of steak on a rock. And he had found this massive rock that was flat, but about 3.5 inches thick, maybe 4. And I had this gorgeous steak that I had put aside, and it was at least 2 inches thick, if not more. And he put the steak right into the rock right into the fire, and the flames were all around this, and the rock got super hot, and he seasoned the steak and put it on this rock, and boy, that thing did. It was like cooking on a grill. It was beautiful, and he flipped the steak, and all these flames around. We're taking photos like crazy. It was so beautiful. And then we ate that steak. It was gorgeous. And I mean, who knew? Steak on a rock.
Steak on a rock.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, the apple tart, before we run out of time on the program today, I think it's a recipe that if you could just kind of describe to people just some of the steps. You don't have to go into all the ingredients and so forth, but it'd be fun to hear about that because it looks delicious.
Oh, thank you. And it was. So when I did that, I always make my tart pastry, pie pastry, in a food processor. So I just put in my flour and my salt and all that, and I cut in the butter, and I use the key is ice cold butter and ice cold water. A little bit of sugar in there. Whip it up in the food processor. It's ready to go. And you should put it in the fridge, but if you're in a pinch, you just can use it. And my recipes, you'll find them in my book, Celebrating Home. You'll find them in Family Table. You'll find them on my website. My recipes for the pastry, it's going to work for you every single time. And then I rolled out the pastry on a pastry cloth so that it doesn't stick to the surface. And I added my apples in there. I just kind of, with sugar, and I don't overly sweeten my things, so maybe a half cup of sugar total with some cinnamon and freshly grated nutmeg, and I just put it all in there, folded up the pastry right around it so it's open in the center, put it on a tray covered with parchment paper and stuck it in that outdoor oven, and it came out golden and flaky crust and tender, juicy, sweet apples with a little touch of cinnamon. It was great.
I knew it was going to be that good when I saw it, and yes.
And you could do it in the oven too.
Yeah,
But,
do it in the oven. Well, all those wonderful recipes online and in your fabulous new cookbook, Celebrating Home. And thank you for showing us that gracious living doesn't have to be stuffy living. Christy Rost, good friend, and it's been simply marvelous for me to see the growth in you, in your career, and your commitment to fine living and family. And it's just wonderful having you here on the program all month.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's been such a treat for me to be on Wining and Dining with Jim White, and also to watch your career grow as well. It has, and you and Vicki, you've always been so dear to Randy and to me, and I treasured this time with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Christy, and Happy New Year to you both.
And Happy New Year to you. Thank you.
The holidays are just rolling right along, folks, so I thought I'd get that in since we won't be together on New Year's Eve. But Christy has some entertaining tips for that, so look for them in any of her cookbooks, and, of course, ChristyRost.com and that beautiful new book, Celebrating Home. And thank you for joining us on Wining and Dining with Jim White. And remember, if anybody asks you what you're making for dinner, tell them reservations.